Hey guys, so welcome back to Tiff Talks 22. I am Tiff. This is a pretty special video. I'm gonna try not to get emotional because, yeah, I don't want to. And I've already been, and I am every year on this date. Um, but I just wanted to tell you a little bit. Today is my oldest son Gabriel's 23rd birthday. And I know a lot of people, they remember, the day of their trauma, right? And I've experienced a lot of trauma on different dates that I don't remember the actual date. But this one, I absolutely remember because something that should have been a joyous and happy occasion because I gained a son was also my most traumatic life experience to date. Like, it was the start of a traumatic experience that would last for years. Um, so I was what, 22? Yeah, I was 22 and pregnant with my first kid. Had the kid on this day, September 15th, 2000. And the neurologist, the neonatologist, I think she was, comes in and says, oh, super nonchalantly too. She says, oh, we think he has Down syndrome, but we're going to run some more tests, so we'll let you know. And she turned and walked away. She walked out of my room. He was so cute, y'all. Like, before they started pumping him with all these things, like his features, it just super normal. Like, you couldn't just look and see it. But the more you inspected, like hands and feet, if you have a child with Down syndrome, then like the simian crease and all those different things. Anyway, and I was like, nah, I was in denial. Can't be, right? And one of my friends at the time was like, why would she say that to you if it was probably not the case? And I was like, but something so serious, why would she be so nonchalant about it, right? Anyway, so she comes back, or they, honey, it's all a blur at this time. But they come back and confirm that he does have trisomy 21, an extra 21st chromosome. And so they also told me at that time that he had a bowel obstruction that would need to be remedied with surgery immediately. And so they were going to transfer him to a different hospital, to a children's hospital, so that they could do the things that they needed to do. So I would be checked out and I could just meet them over there. 22 years old, y'all. Anyway, so all of that happens. We transfer, we get over there. They find out that he has Hirschsprung's disease. And Hirschsprung's is like a disease where there are ganglion nerve cells in the intestine. Yeah, like, I'm a geek, always been. So reading. But that allow our stool and everything to move through the intestines. So part of his intestines, which is Hirschsprung's, was missing those cells. And so it would get to a certain point and stop and build up. So he had this whole build up. So they had to remove part of his intestine, and they would replace it with a colostomy bag. I just remember, even after she told me at the original hospital, just crying uncontrollably, just unconsolable, right? I remember my mom asking me, I'm good. I remember my mom asking me if I was upset that she and my sister, Monica at the time, had talked me out of getting an abortion. I feel like I said no, but I still may have been just a little bit I'm not sure. But I was definitely angry, in a space of anger. I didn't even want him to have the surgery because, they give you worst case scenario. And I was like, I don't want him to live a life that is not full, like, full of potential. You know what I'm saying? And she was like, well, we'll go to court. Dr. Treen, I still remember her name. Uh, a really studly little young lady, short little lady, very studly. But man, when I tell you she was the coldest, I love anybody who is super knowledgeable. And this woman was an amazing doctor, even if I didn't like her, okay? Which at first I definitely didn't, but I grew to kind of be appreciative because she did always give it to me straight. She was super knowledgeable and she was working to save my kid. And so she threatened to take my parental rights away, to take me to court, take my parental rights so they could do the surgery ASAP. And I was like, fine. Like, that's how angry I was. Fine. But of course, cooler heads, less emotion. Well, I don't know if they were less emotional, but they were cooler heads prevailed and was like, could you live with yourself with that? Just like the abortion thing. And I was like, they're right. Probably not. Right? And so, of course, I okayed them to do the surgery, and they did everything they needed to do, and he was still just as beautiful and adorable as ever. And that was just the start of our life adjusting with a colostomy bag, okay? And so that was a whole other learning experience. And they did tell me that he had a hole in his heart and a murmur at the time, but these things often close, right? And so ultimately it did not close. And so he went into heart failure when he was like 3 months old. And it was like a week. He already had been seeing a cardiologist. It was a week before Christmas. 3 months later, a week before Christmas. And he just was not feeding well. He was super lethargic. His color was off. And I called his doctor, his cardiologist, and she said, bring him in. And so when I brought him in, that's what she said. He is going into heart failure. We need to do the surgery. And so we ended up having heart surgery like 7 days before or 5 days before Christmas. And so, yeah, there's that. He was puking, projectile, vomiting everywhere. It was pretty intense. And so he had this surgery. It was a 3-hour situation. And I remember them rolling him by after the surgery and let me know that everything had gone well, and just tears of relief. Like, it was just uncontrollable. I was so happy and relieved that everything had gone well. I knew I was anxious and concerned, but I feel like I didn't know how concerned until those tears came. Anyway, and then it turns out that he had 3 different defects that they fixed at the same time, not just that one. So there's that. And so, but you could see in his energy when he woke up almost an immediate difference. Color change, feeding, more alert, more interactive. Like, it was pretty wild to see, but also like super rewarding. And I know for those people who work in cardiology, especially for kids, like, to see the difference so quickly has to be super fulfilling and rewarding to do often, Anyway, so we go home like 5 days later. Like, that's how quickly he recovered. 5 days later with, more scars. But then something started going wrong. And so on Christmas, here he is, like, puking everywhere. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? Took him back to the hospital. Oh, he picked up a virus. Where the heck? We've been at the hospital. Yeah, probably here. So anyway, hospitals are germy, guys. Just know that. Anyway, so we ended up back in the hospital like Christmas night for like 3 or 4 more days. And so that was pretty much our journey back and forth the entire time. Through early childhood education at home, he was getting 3 different kinds of therapy where they would come to the house every week. And it was just, and I was steady reading, um, more and more, because I feel like the more you know, the less, the more empowered you are, right? So I was reading so much good stuff, bad stuff, where one of his therapists was like, get out of the library. Because we would literally just go and I'm checking out books and just sitting and reading all day. Um, and it was also freaking me out because sometimes, like, you can know too much, right? And so, like, the potential for it. But I was definitely one of those parents where every time we had a doctor's visit, anything you tell me, right, I'm going to hear what you're saying, but I'm going to look it up too. Sometimes before you tell me, and sometimes after. So I just wanted to be prepared. I don't feel like I feel like I didn't want to be shocked the way that I had been shocked on September 15th, you know? And of course, there is a test for these things prior to, but because I was so young, the likelihood of me having a child like that um, was super low. Like the percentages, the statistics were super low. And so we didn't have the test. So I feel like there was a little bit of guilt to that for some time. And it's so crazy because as the years go by and we have all these different experiences from a medical standpoint, um, like everything, y'all. Like I could just really tell y'all some stuff, and y'all would be like, "Dang, like that too." Stuff that I had never even heard of. Okay, like never heard of. Some things that his doctors hadn't actually seen, but they had heard about, or read about, or studied. Right? It was insane, but it was a very trying few years. And I say few, it was more than a few, because I would say he wasn't like medically in the clear until he was probably 10 years old. So it was years and years and years of this. But I also look back at that now as like when he really started to thrive was when I started to see or accept a different perspective about the situation, right? Where I wasn't looking at it like I was being punished, or I wasn't looking at it like, woe is me. I was looking at it like, I started to look at it like as a blessing because of the things that I learned from him, that I got from him, that I learned about myself, as a result of what our experiences were, such as endurance, such as compassion, such as empathy. I met so many amazing um, families who were also dealing with similar situations just by, us living in the hospitals. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, I just kind of started to see a purpose in the situation. But I remember there's one year, I think Gabriel was about 10. I was going to share it, but I was like, that's okay. I'll just make a video. Where Kim Burrell posted something where she said, a lot of times things don't make sense at the time, but it's because if we could find our own way out of it, we would. We would do what we could to find our way out of it, and then that would interfere with what the divine's plan was for us. Honey, I was like, ain't that the truth? Because, I often said, had I known ahead of time that we were going to have the journey that we were going to have, I probably would have aborted it. So then how would that have changed my journey? You know what I'm saying? How would it have changed his journey? And the ultimate goal, I feel, was one, because going through certain things can give you so much. It definitely taught me perspective. It definitely taught me to persevere. Definitely had my experiences with mental health, because I was definitely suicidal at various points, probably at least two different times in my life, very suicidal, right? Um, and so resilience, all the things, all the things, all the things. And so my perspective changed from woe is me to one of gratitude and one of empowerment, where it was like, I know this is not a journey that just anybody could endure. So then it turned into one of gratitude, because, like, what must God think of me or know about me to choose me for that position, right? Whoosh, Anyway, so every year, as I became more enlightened and aware, um, I just usually start this day with a day of gratitude for what he, what we survived. What we survived, right? So when you guys see me and I'm crying or I'm emotional about the little things, like, I feel like just gratitude is at the root of so much in my life, because I know my history. I know where I could have been, how things could have been, and I'm grateful for the path that I'm on. Um, yeah. So even if you're in the midst of something that feels like your most traumatic day, your most traumatic years, know that there is always a purpose and a master plan. Even if we can't see it at the time, most things that occur in our lives, not most, all things that occur in our lives have some sort of purpose, even if we don't like it. Or sometimes I tell my guys, like, okay, y'all could have gave me that lesson in a different way. Right, right. But then at the same time, I'm like, they probably couldn't have, because I probably would have been like still fighting it, you know what I'm saying? So and I don't even say that about Gabriel's situation. I mean about other little stuff where it's like, friends or enemies being revealed and things like that. Well, y'all could have told me that, because I asked y'all about her, like, certain things. Anyway, so I just wanted to encourage somebody today and remind somebody. I feel sometimes like I have such imposter syndrome when people hear some of the things that we've gone through, and they say, "Oh, you're so strong," and I feel like a fraud. Sorry. I feel like a fraud sometimes, because I know I haven't always been this way, but I have to pull myself out of that energy, because I know it is also the truth, right? I feel like there are times when certain things come up that even if I am anxious, I still have this energy of God is in control. Um, Even when my sister passed away and we found her there, like, that's how I consoled myself. God's will, God's will, God's will. Because I don't feel like anything happens in this world that is outside of divine will, right? So know that anything that you are experiencing and going through, and yeah, I keep saying God. I definitely don't believe that God is like this little man in the sky. But for if you, in case you're wondering, I definitely believe that God is a divine and supernatural and most high energy. But I just kept saying God's will, God's will, God's will. I used that phrase to console myself, right? So that's my perspective in life about anything at this time. and it's been a really helpful one. I believe it's super accurate. Um, and it's just for us to see or figure out what we're supposed to get from it or what we're supposed to create because of it. So when I tell you guys to look for the meaning or to look for the person for the purpose or to find the lesson in it, I'm telling you from experience that that is a possible thing to do, even if you don't want to hear it. One of, like I was saying about my friend that first day who said, why would she say that? She ultimately, probably like the second day, the 16th, asked me, do you think God is punishing you for having sex outside of marriage? I feel like, first of all, I thought that was stupid. Just because I know a whole bunch of people who are actually whores, right? So it's like, ain't nothing happening to them, so what you mean? Anyway, but also, she was a preacher's kid, and I just was super offended that that's the perspective that she chose. And it's so funny. Well, it's not funny. Ironic that she ended up getting pregnant like less than a year later. Yeah, and she was not married. She married the guy because of that, but already didn't like him. So that's the only reason she got married to this guy. Anyway, but turns out also that it happened to her older sister. It happened to her younger sister. It also happened to her mother in that same direct fashion. They were super religious, of course, preacher's kids, right? And while I had the thought of, well, I wonder what your punishment is. And what I know now is that was likely like a generational pattern that perhaps needed to be broken. Um, but that's neither here nor there. Our friendship definitely changed and ended because she made that statement. Um, and I still talk to her, occasionally every blue moon, like maybe once a year or so. Uh, but our friendship changed. Now, that said, forgive the people in your life who don't know what to say to you because you just don't know what to say. Because the truth of the matter is, I was in a space at the time that nothing was helpful, right? I didn't want to pray. Like, we would stand in circles and have prayer as a family, as a group, and I'm like, nope, tuning it out, right? But when I used to sing to my son in the NICU and hold him and rock him, um, I was still in such a space of gratitude because God and my connection to the divine, I feel, is innate and it's what I know. So, there's a song, I think Andre Crouch is whose song it is. My tribute is what it's called. And so I would sing that song to Gabriel all the time in the NICU. One of my favorites for sure. But I remember talking to a friend about this type of situation, and telling her, that I had carried some guilt from that. How I felt like I had turned my back on God for some time. And, God has cleared me, right? Because I feel like people are so much harder on themselves than the divine actually is. Um, so me and the divine, me and God, me and Source, we have definitely talked about that and walked through that, and I feel like it's a forgivable circumstance and it's been forgiven, but I still hold myself accountable because it was like, but at the same time I understand why I was in that energy. And so that's what my friend was telling me. And I don't know if you just sometimes need to hear it from another human being, but she was like, even when you thought that you weren't praying or you had turned your back on God, you would still say and do things that honored God. And I was like, Yeah, you're right. Like, because it's true, I would, but like, any spoiled brat child, I was just like, nope, mad at you. But at the same time, oh, thank you so much for that. I'm so grateful, right? So it's such a, it's such a position to be in. I'm so glad I can laugh about it now. I'm sure, like I'm telling you, I'm sure my angels are like, this girl here so many times. But I'm so grateful, grateful, grateful. The point is, I just vowed once I came to the realization where I could make sense of what was the most chaotic period of my life. Um, my whole perspective changed. And so now I feel this obligation to share this story with as many people as who are willing to listen to it or hear it, right? Even on my page, some of my friends were like, I read this story every year. I know the story and I read it every year. But even knowing it, you read it, I hope that they find encouragement in it. Because I'm going to always tell it. I was concerned. Well, I wasn't really concerned, but I was like, I feel like Gabriel has kind of forgotten some of the experiences. But I know he still remembers the colostomy bag because I asked him that. He's like, yep, yep. He definitely remembers that. And then we had a doctor's appointment recently where I could see his anxiety, and it was just pretty routine. He had like an ultrasound and some blood work done, and just going into the blood work, I could just see his anxiety rise, 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 rise. So I said, okay, he kind of remembers, you know what I mean, like what his experiences were, um, because a lot of you, especially if you have a child with special needs or someone who goes to the doctor a lot, they have that white coat trauma where they see the doctors walk in and it's like, oh gosh, right? Like what they about to do to me now, right? So he definitely had some of that I thought maybe he was over, but yeah, no, not completely. Um, but yeah, I just wanted to encourage somebody today. You are so much stronger than what your trauma is. And even if you cannot currently make sense of it or make sense of it as at the time of whatever it is that you're going through, understand that as time progresses, your understanding will get clearer, especially if you have a desire to understand, and forgive yourself if that desire does not come right away. Um, and forgive your loved ones for your friends as well, for not knowing what to say to encourage you or how to encourage you. I feel like a lot of people withdrew just for the simple fact that they didn't know what to say. And I feel like that's okay because nothing they could say would make it better anyway, right? Um, so yeah, be understanding of that. When your friends seem to not show up for you, that there's likely a reason for it. Um, and try not to hold grudges about that. Okay. Um, what else do I want to say? So yeah, no woe is me, no pity parties, none of that stuff. I just want to encourage you and empower you and invite you to share in my gratitude, but also inspire you to look for what it is you're supposed to be learning. Look for the silver lining. Look for how this situation improves you, even if it hurts you to your core at the time. Just know that eventually you will have an ability to change that. Something that caused you the greatest amount of pain into something that delights you in such a way. Y'all, I truly feel like Gabriel, that name, um, no accidents, okay? That's his name. I was not thinking about it being an angel at the time, but because it was an angel, my 5-year-old nephew suggested that name because he had a kid in his class named that, and he liked the name. And I was like, cool, we're going with that. But me being who I am now, and even later, right, knowing that it was the name of one of God's angels, I was like, yeah, that'll be perfect, right? But there's so much power in a name as well. But I truly feel like this kid is that. He's definitely been that for me. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to share his story, his testimony, our testimony, and invite you to share in my gratitude. I hope this video is helpful for someone, and it kind of encourages you to persevere, to persist, and to recover. Okay? I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.